Now, Martin Luther King, there is someone who's really changed the world, and we can learn a lot from him. He was a clergyman who became the spokesperson and the figurehead for the civil rights movement. And he was a great orator, and his I Have a Dream speech actually does go down as one of the most famous and beloved speeches in America today. So let's take a look at that. It was only 16 minutes long, which is amazing, but it follows the form perfectly. So he starts off with what is, and he traverses back and forth to what could be, and then he ends with the new bliss. So what I do when I'm analyzing a speech, I transcribe it, and I actually overlay the words over time, and that's how I come up with this shape. So I want to stretch the presentation form out and show you what it looks like with the words transcribed over time in the shape. Now, you can't really see the words here because I'm actually using them as an information device. Most people in America had not heard a Southern Baptist preacher before. It was the first time it was actually broadcast nationally. And a Southern Baptist preacher, they have a real rhythm and a cadence to what they say, and they take these long, dramatic breaths and pauses. So what I've done here is I've put a line break after every time Martin Luther King paused. And you can actually see how it breaks it into shorter little lengths of text. So I'm going to cover up these little lengths of text with a gray box because I want to use it as an information device to explain to you the types of words that he used as he spoke. So the first color of little bars you're going to see here is they're representing every time he used repetition. Now, repetition is a rhetorical device, a very popular rhetorical device that's used, and you basically are repeating yourself to drive a point home. And usually repetition is done as a series of 3, and you'll usually say it once and then twice, and then people are just expecting it to be done by the 3rd time, and he did it a lot. He did it a lot 3 times, 4 times. Now, the next bar color you're going to see is pink, and these are metaphors and visual words, and he was very good at describing things visually. It actually would have probably ruined it if he'd had slides. It would have just destroyed it because he painted in such metaphorical and visual ways, almost like scenes, and you could actually see what he was saying as he spoke. Now, the next color that you'll see here is green, and this is familiar songs, scriptures, and literature, things that were very dear to the African American people at that time. So the 4th color that you'll see is orange, and this is political references. This is when he's referencing documents like the Declaration of Independence or other documents that had promises to them of freedom, and he's reminding the people about these promises that were made to them. So let's walk through what this looks like. I want to show you when it moves at the bottom, when you're at the bottom of the first part where it's what is, and it jumps to what could be. So that first transition point. At the end of the first part of what is, that was the very first time they clapped really loudly, and you can actually audibly hear the audience getting kind of roused up here. And he says, America has given the Negro people a bad check, a check which has come back marked insufficient funds. Now, all of us know what it's like to have no money in our checking account. So he used a metaphor here that describes something that many people in the audience may have felt or even experienced. And he says that at the end of what is. And then the response to that, it's like a call and response. The response to that is, and this is where they really went nuts. The first time they were like screaming and clapping. He says, so we have come to cash this check, a check that will give us upon demand the riches of freedom and the security of justice. So he was really good at using metaphors that completed each other and would get the people excited. So now I want to scoot across, and as we move across, you'll be able to see the different colors of the different words that he's saying and what those symbolize. What's interesting about this, he's breaking down the contrast between what is and what could be almost at the phrase level. He's saying, I have a dream that one day, I have a dream that one day. By moving the frequency back and forth, this particular section has become the most beloved part of his speech and the most memorable, which is fascinating to me. So he'll start off with, I have a dream. Now, the first time he says, I have a dream, he responds with a political promise that was broken. He says, I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the meaning of its creed, that we hold these truths as self-evident that all men are created equal. So he's simply saying what could be is the fulfillment of this promise that was made to us. Then he moves back and forth between I have a dream that one day, I have a dream that one day, and he continues back and forth in that manner. So if we scoot to the end, as you know, the end is where you're supposed to paint a picture of the new bliss, and Mr. King does this marvelously. But you notice something interesting at the end. The bulk of the kinds of words he uses are mostly songs and hymns and spiritual literature and repetition. So the blue there is repeating and repeating and repeating and repeating. He's driving his message home there. Now the green is really interesting to me. The first little batch of green is a quotation he made out of the Old Testament book from the prophet Isaiah, book 40. And he's basically telling the audience that if we do this, we are fulfilling scriptures ourselves. Well, that's something that would have been very special to the audience. The next little batch of green is very interesting. It's the quote from the words, "My country, 'tis of thee." It's, "My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty." Now, the people at the time did not feel this was the sweet land of liberty. Now, he picked this particular song. It's fascinating to me that he picked it, because this song was what they used in the anti-slavery movement as an outcry of the fact that this was not the sweet land of liberty. So they'd actually changed up the words as an outcry against the promise of this song. So the song had like mixed emotion for the people in the audience, because it was a promise, but it was also something they'd been singing as an outcry. So the little third patch of green there is where he repeats a stanza from "My country, 'tis of thee." And then the very last batch of green is where he quoted a Negro spiritual, which is free at last, thank God Almighty, I'm free at last." So it's so amazing about the ending and the way he constructed it is that he used things that were precious to the audience, scriptures and songs and hymns, and repeated things that were resonating already very deeply inside the audience. And he reached in and he touched those things that were precious to them. And that's why his speech reaches such a frenzied climax at the end. He's a masterful communicator. So Martin Luther King, yes, he was a masterful communicator. He had a dream, he had an idea, he had something to convey that he was really passionate about. But he did a lot of risk. He took a lot of risk to make sure that his message got out. You know, his house was bombed. He was stabbed with a letter opener, and he ultimately lost his life for what was very, very important to him. So there's not very many people that are listening to this and watching it that are going to lose their life for their great idea. But it doesn't mean that you can't dream. And you guys need to dream. We need to have dreams. We need to have dreams of ideas and hopes of ideas that are going to make the world a better place. So I want to encourage you to reach deep into the audience, learn to be a really good communicator, and spark inside of your audience things that will actually help you change the world. Thank you.